Hey guys, Tarke here. I want to make a just set video talking about class dual setups which are strong for Chaos DoT builds because I've been playing a lot of Chaos DoT builds at the moment. This will be mostly focused on stuff like Caustic Arrow, Toxic Rain, or like Poison Scourge Arrow, but this would also apply to most Essence Rain characters and so on and so forth. So, if you're playing any kind of those dotty builds, or you're playing any build, you might just have some pretty interesting setups. Now, the most obvious large cluster jewel to go for will be just obviously the chaos damage cluster jewel. The important thing to note is you're going to want an eye level 75 base to get 2 jewel sockets. That's how you can do like a large into 2 mediums into 2 smalls. It's worth saying though that the large jewels are mostly just damage mods, whereas the medium is more like utility based and the small is mostly defensive. Now, for Chaos builds, this is a bit interesting because you can get a lot of just Chaos multi, which is very powerful on mediums. It could be, if you haven't got that many points in your build, I would probably say just go for a medium into a small. You don't have to go large, medium, small. But let's just go through what the best ones are and then like what kind of build you'd want them in. So Grim Oath, 10% Fizz's extra Chaos damage. Obviously not good for a Chaos build. Overwhelming Malice. Chance to get only might on crit, you're not going to be critting, or again, you're not doing Fizz Chaos, so no good for you. Touch of Cruelty. So this one's pretty cool. So this one gives you 10% chance to hinder enemies on hit. Enemies hindered by you take 10% increase to take Chaos damage. Now, there are lots of Chaos spells which hinder for you. For example, stuff like Blight, stuff like Abyssal Cry. So even if you're a build which doesn't hit a lot, you can still benefit from that 10% increased damage. So this is still like pretty solid, even if you're a build that isn't spam hitting, like for example, Toxic Rain. Unwavering Evil. So this gives you 30% Chaos damage, and Chaos skills ignore interruption from stuns. This is actually very strong. So one of the most annoying things about Vol Blight is it has a cast time, and there's nothing more frustrating than getting stunned out of your Vol skill. If you have this notable on an Essence Rain Contagion character, which doesn't have stun immunity, this will make the character feel much smoother to play. Essence Rain Contagion is like a 1-2 build. You're quite vulnerable while you're casting the Contagion into the Essence Rain. So having this will make that feel much, much stronger. So I would actually highly recommend. I know most people go Trickster, so they have Ghost Shrouds for partial immunity. I died on my last Trickster to stun locking stuff, so Unwavering Evil is very strong and has very good synergy. Unspeakable Gifts. So this is enemies you kill have a 10% chance to explode, dealing a quarter of the maximum life as chaos damage. This stacks with other destination sources, so stuff like Profane Bloom, and notables do stack, and you can get multiple Unspeakable Gift notables. So you could get 20%, 30%, etc. It's actually pretty solid. I messed around with this a little bit with just a 10% chance, and you do notice it. Because it is a quarter of the enemy's max life, is pretty cool, and it just means that every now and again your build has satisfying pops being added to it, so this is just a nice, fun one for clear. Obviously, it's not really going to be helping you for single target unless you're doing something wonky with, like, cheesing ads. But, yeah, just a nice thing for map clear. Now, Dark Ideation gives 2% of increased chaos damage per 100% mana, up to a maximum of 80%. So, this is good if you're doing, like, a Mind Over Matter build. So, let's say you went for, like, Mind Over Matter Essence Drain or something. That's up to 80% chaos damage. It's powerful, but it's just damage. It doesn't give you anything unique, so I wouldn't really recommend it. It's not like giving you stun immunity. It's not giving you, it's not giving you stun immunity. It's not giving you like explosions. And also one thing, when I said that you can stack them, you can't get multiple of these on one jewel. You stack them across different jewels. So you could get like this on a large and a medium, or having 2 larges or 2 mediums. You can't have multiple of the same notable on one jewel. Worth saying. Unholy Grace. This gives you 30% chaos damage, 10% attack and cast speed. This is a very strong, just generic one. You'd be happy with this on basically anything. And then Wicked Pool gives you 35% chaos damage and 20% skill effect duration. This will be most notable on things like Blight and Toxic Rain, because they really care about the skill effect duration. If I had to rank them in like a particular order, I'd probably put this at rank 1 for the builds that want the skill effect duration, because getting 12% skill effect duration is very valuable. I would then probably put this at rank... You know what, this is just generic, shove it on anything, so this is like the flex slot. This is very niche. Unspeakable Gifts is like, it's kind of like Unholy Grace, it just feels fine on everything. I think the stun immunity is really solid, and this is just, you know, gives you another source of hinder and gives you 10% increased damage. If you didn't want to think about it at all, you didn't want to have to like do any crazy stacking stuff, going for this, for the skill effect duration, the chaos damage, so Wicked Pal, Unholy Grace, and then Unspeakable Gifts would be the most generic combo, or even just Unwavering Evil for the stun stuff. So that's what I'd go for your large duels. For mediums you have a couple of options. If you're going for just damage, the 5% chaos damage overtime multiplier will be the best one for you. And you'll notice that there's lots of the same nodes on the medium as the large. So again, the stun immunity. Obviously, this isn't one you'd want to stack, because once you've got one of this, it's less powerful. Now this, you could stack multiple of Dark Ideations up, so that could be potentially very strong. If you were playing a Mind over Matter, like Essence Drain build, for example, you could have 1 large, 2 medium, and that'd be 240% increased damage, which would be ridiculous. The other thing which makes this node particularly strong is you get a lot of Chaos Dot multiplier on the mediums, and once you get too much multiplier, it then becomes weaker and increased damage becomes more powerful. So there's pretty good synergy where this like keeps your increased damage high and your multiplied damage high. Wicked Pool is obviously always good if you need skill effect duration for your build. Septic Spells is specifically strong for like poison, so if you're doing like maybe poison BV, I would highly recommend that. Low Tolerance again is for poison builds, so very good for like poison BV or like poison Scourge Arrow. Steady Torment, again, more poison shenanigans, so good for those builds. So if you're playing like poison BV, Steady Torment, Low Tolerance, Septic Spells would be the main 3 to look for. Eternal Suffering gives the most skill effect duration available at 30%, which is very strong, and it gives you 5% multiplier, which is multiplier for most builds is generally better than increased damage. Eldritch Inspiration is very strong generically because it gives 8% Chaos Dot. You can get up to 10% on some of the other nodes, but 8% is quite a good bit, and it gives you a nice chunk of mana and mana regen. So maybe for that Mind over Matter build we keep talking about, you'd go for Eldritch Inspiration and Dark Ideation, and again, you can get 3 notables on a large, 2 on a medium, and 1 on a small. Wasting Affliction. This gives you increased damage with ailments, and damaging ailments deal damage 10% faster. This is only good, for example, for poison builds or for bleed builds. Bleed builds would rather have the physical damage over time multiplier notable, not the chaos one, so that's really only good for poison builds. Hemorrhage is for weird crit builds. Don't do weird crit builds. Flow of Life is solid if you just want a little bit of extra life in yourself, a little bit of extra defense. You get the 24% increased damage, 4% maximum life, and regenerate 0.6%. So getting a little bit of extra life is always very strong. Exposure Therapy, I stacked a bunch of these on one of my other characters. This gives you 10 damage over time multiplier, which is the highest you can get on mediums, and 30% chaos resistance against damage over time. There's lots of very scary chaos damage over time effects, and if you stack a couple of these up, you very easily cap out. Very easily. Brush with Death also gives 10% and gives recover 1% of your life on kill, recover 1% of your ES on kill. This is really good for non-Trickster builds because Trickster already has like 2% built in. Stacking a bunch of it is great, but generally the Trickster 2% is enough. But this is solid on an Occultist or like any Ranger-based dot build. Val Reinvigoration is good if you're doing anything with the ES. So this gives you 6% maximum energy shield, some increased damage, and regenerate 2% of your energy shield per second if you've killed an enemy recently. Circling Oblivion. This gives you some increased damage over time, some skill effect duration. Again, you could get more skill effect duration and more damage from Wicked Pool. And you can get 5% dot multi and 30% chaos skill effect duration. So if you wanted skill effect duration, this one's okay, but this is like the lowest ranked for skill effect duration in my opinion. Brood for Potency gives you 24% increased damage over time, 20% increased life and mana from Flask, 10% increased Flask charges gained. Pretty weak in my opinion. And then Student for Decay gives you Chaos Res and 25% increased damage over time. Again, pretty weak in my opinion compared to some of the other options. If you really want the Chaos Res because maybe you're doing like a Divine Flesh build, it's solid. but I'd probably rather have exposure therapy for the much bigger multiplier and the chaos res against damage over time. Now, you can go for the 4% generic damage over time if you can't afford or you don't have access to the chaos multi. Let's say you're in like SSF or something. However, you have a lot less access to the good things, and obviously the nodes themselves are worth 1% like less dot multi damage. So you can still get access to Wasting Affliction, but that's only really good for ailments. Hemorrhage is again for crit-based ailments. You do get access to percent life node. You do get access to exposure therapy for the big chunk of multi. You still get access to Brush to Death, so for this I'd generally say exposure therapy, Brush to Death would be the main two. Otherwise there's the ES one. Again, the weakest of the skill effect duration nodes, the weak Flask one, and then the weak Chaos Res one. Now, one which is really worth mentioning, in my opinion, is the 6% increased Flask effect duration. If you feel like you really don't need any more damage on your build, I would actually quite recommend this one. So stacking Flask effect duration is just very nice quality of life. The Still Perfection isn't that strong. Maybe if you're doing stuff with Indigon, but you very rarely do Indigon on these kind of builds. But it does give you the increased life, mana, and Flask effect duration. Non-unique Flask applied have 10% increased effect and 5% attack and cast speed. It's a solid generic one. This is like, if you hit this, you're happy with it, but it's nothing that special. Fasting is interesting for certain setups. So this gives you increased Flask charges gained and 20% increased movement speed while under no Flask effects. Now, when people first started doing Awakener last league, we saw a lot of people running like 4 life Flasks while they were learning the fight. You could actually go for a setup using 2 of these medium jewels. And if you stacked 2 of these, that'd be 40% increased Flask charges gained, 40% movement speed while under no Flask effect. So maybe if you were like very rough and you just wanted to learn the boss fight, you could run like 5 instant life Flasks with this. Always have like a pseudo Quicksilver active, and then just like spam instant life Flasks. And if you wanted to just like brute force through a boss fight you were trying to learn, it's something to consider, but it's incredibly, incredibly niche. Mender's Wellspring is very powerful though, and this I would recommend for any life-based build. So this gives you increased life recovery from Flasks. Life Flasks gain 1 charge every 3 seconds, and remove bleeding when you use a life Flask. People always run Staunching on their life Flasks. You could then drop Staunching from your life Flask and instead run like Shock Immunity or like Freeze Removal or something. This is very solid. It gives you Flask Charge Generation, which is amazing for bossing. It frees up a mod on your Flask slots, which lets you put something else on there. Vol Molten Shell is incredibly powerful, so we're seeing a lot of like, you know, Granite of Iron skins or Jade of Reflexes. So that's really solid and something really worth considering. Especially if you were doing, for example, like a Pathfinder Chaos build or a Raider Chaos build, and you already have complete ailment immunity. If you had this as well, you'd have complete ailment, well, yeah, complete elemental ailment and bleed removal, which would be very strong. Special Reserve is like a solid generic one, giving the 2% regen and the 20% increased damage. Numbing Elixir gives you physical damage reduction during any life or mana flask, and some increased life and mana recovery. This would be good for like a Might of a Matter base build, because you nearly always just have an Enduring Flask always active, so that's just 2% physical damage reduction, basically always active. Brood for Potency is like okay, it gives you a little bit of damage, it gives you some life and mana recovery, and some reduced flask charges, increased flask charges gained. Peak Vigor is very good though, and this is the main reason why I mention it, so you could go for like Peak Vigor plus Mender's Wellspring, which is the main combo I'd go for. So this gives you 8% increased maximum life and 30% increased life recovery. So that's 30% there, and that's 25. That's 55% increased life recovery. Very strong, and then a bunch of increased Flask effect duration. I quite like Catalyzed Eternal Life Flask on Trixers, because they've got a bunch of life recovery on there. If you stack all of this up, you'd get insane recovery from a Catalyzed Eternal. Very, very strong. And then Liquid Inspiration gives a bunch of cool mana things, which is good if you're doing, you know, mana stuff. But as far as mediums go, I would say realistically you want to just be using either the Chaos Dot multi or the Flask skill effect duration. Getting into small, this is where it's going to be a lot more specialized based on your build. You've got a couple of options. Obviously, if you're a life build, going for the increased life notables is very strong. So Gladiator's Fortitude gives you attack stuff, which doesn't matter, so you don't want that. Towering Threat gives you 10% AoE, 5% life, 3% character size. This is great if you want to stack a bunch of this to make your character look cool. Area of Effect generically is very powerful. It's great for stuff like Contagion. It's great for stuff like, well, it's great with anything which does AoE, basically. Cold-Blooded Killer. The cold damage doesn't do anything for you, but you can get recover 2% life on kill. Less worthwhile, though, because you can get life on kill recovered through, is it Flow of Life? No, which one? One of these, Brush with Death, sorry, gives 1% life on kill and damage, so I'd much rather have that. So, wouldn't really recommend Cold-Blooded Killer. Flow of Life gives you some 24% increased damage time, 4% life, a little bit of regen. Decent, but you can get this exact node on mediums, so because of that, it's less unique in my opinion, it's worth less. Again, Brush with Death, you could get this if you wanted the recovery, and you're getting the 10 dot multi, which is very strong. Careful Handling, you're not a trap build, so you don't want that. Peak Vigor, again, very strong if you want to be stacking up Super Catalyzed Eternal Life Loss, possibly. Fettle is great, it gives the most life, it gives 10% and 20 fat life. You get more here than you get from anything else. Feast of Flesh, you could do it if you're doing some weird life gain on hit stuff. For example, Toxic Rain, this is very strong. But for everything else, you don't really want it, really. It could also maybe be decent for the Scourge area poison thing, but not really. Sublime Sensation is solid for any Trickster or just any hybrid setup because it gives 8% life, 10% ES, very strong. Surging Vitality is another very, very interesting one in my opinion because it has a completely unique effect on there. So not only does it give you the 8%, it also gives every 5 seconds regenerate 10% of your life over 1 second. And again, if you had 2 of these, that'd be 20% of your life over 1 second. And a little bit of regen. Very strong node, very nice for bossing. Very, very good. You can get these from other sources, but it's like unique as far as like jewels go, in my opinion. Like you can't get this on large and medium, that's why I mentioned it. But you can get this on Guardian and Sound Guardian. Anyway. Peace Amidst Chaos. This gives you life, 2% regen, and 2% phys reduction while stationary. Decent if you're going to be blighting a lot, but you can get regen from other ones. The physical reduction's nice, but I don't value this as highly. Adrenaline gives you stuff while leeching, so not important for these builds that we're talking about. Increased strength, this would be good if there was like a good strength stacking meta for the Chaos Dot builds, but there isn't. But obviously for other builds, stacking strength, this is very strong. Holistic Health, good if you're doing Mind Over Matter stuff, but 8% life, 10% mana. I would rather get something else, to be honest. Heart of Iron, gain 10% maximum life as extra armor. This is actually pretty solid if you're doing Molten Shell stuff. Let's say you had 7k life, not that difficult at 7k life. That's 700 flat armor. That's a lot of flat armor you're adding to your build. If you're going full like Vol Molten Shell meme, this might actually be decent. It's like getting like an extra item of just like an extra chest or an extra shield or something. So it's good, maybe has some niche applications, but nothing too exciting. Natural Vigor gives 8% life, 30% increased evasion rating. There are just stronger options, but it's okay. Vicious Guard, again, this gives you some block stuff that we don't care about. This gives you 20 life, chance to block, and chance to get endurance charge when you block. If you wanted to block one, I would use this one. But there are better endurance charge nodes we'll talk about slightly later. Sage gives you lightning res, mana regen, regenerate 1.5, pretty weak in my opinion. And then Blessed gives you a little bit of chaos res, some life, and some increased maximum mana. So this would be much stronger if you wanted a good Mind Over Matter option compared to the one we saw earlier, which was just life and mana. I'd much rather have the chaos res. Obviously for ES builds, you want some ES stuff. Stalwart Commander, increased effect, not that great unless you're stacking both Grace and Discipline, which is pretty rare these days. Brush with Death, again, very strong, good if you want the damage, good if you need the recovery, but you can get this from other sources. I'd sooner have this on a medium jewel. Again, you can get this from other sources, it's good though. If you were playing a hybrid build, you'd generally rather have the small nodes giving you life than ES, so I'd probably not use this. Save of the Moment is interesting because it gives you 3% of ES regeneration while stationary, and you don't need to use like Zealot's Oath or anything. So actually pretty strong if your build doesn't go to Zealot's Oath, in my opinion. Energy from Nor is the one that's the most obviously powerful. 100 flat maximum energy shields, like an extra pair of gloves. That's very strong. Will Shaper, 5% of maximum mana as extra maximum energy shield. This is very good for anyone like doing, you know, high row shenanigans or just anything stacking a bunch of mana. If you were using the Cirrus Helmet and you were doing like a hybrid Mind of Matter Trickster build, you could maybe use this. But I'm not sure if I would rather use this over a life base, but it's something you could consider. Springback, decent if you're trying to stack fast to start of any shield recharge. Maybe doing like this, plus Bated Breath, plus Soul Strike, and the Blightwell Talisman maybe. Conservation of Energy, you don't really need the Spell Leech for the builds we're talking about right now. And the Mystic Ward is okay if you really need spell block from somewhere, because you're doing like a Kevlava block-based build, but there are better sources of block, in my opinion. Now, for armor, I'm mostly just talking about the armor for Enduring Composure. That's gain endurance charge every second if you've been hit recently, is very strong. Recently is 4 seconds. So if you just wanted completely automated endurance charges, and for small jewels, you can get these down to just 2 points. That could be like 3 points with the jewel, but like 2 point, 100% uptime of endurance charges. Very strong, in my opinion. Evasion rating has got some pretty interesting ones. Obviously, you don't want battle hardened. Again, you're probably not doing the whole gray stacking stuff. Right. +1 to all max res. Very strong. I shouldn't have to explain why. Has natural synergy with the increased evasion rating being really good for Raider-based builds, really good for Trickster-based builds, because both of those ascendancies want high evasion rating. Natural Vigor, if you were, like, for example, just stacking as much evasion as possible, and you still wanted life, you could do this, but I would sooner just use a life small cluster jewel. Untouchable, if you are just super desperate to cap out your dodge and spell dodge, but there are better sources, in my opinion. Shifting Sands, if you want the blind on hit, there are better sources of blind. I wouldn't rate that at all. Readiness, 4% flat chance to evade hits if you haven't been hit recently. Flat chance to evade hits is actually incredibly strong because there's lots of ways of scaling this up. So, for example, if you go Iron Reflexes on a Raider, Raider has a notable, which is more chance to evade. Now, Iron Reflexes turns all of your evasion into armor, but doesn't stop you from evading. So you could do an Iron Reflexes Raider, for example, stacking flat evade chance, which there's some of it on the tree. On Survivalist, there's quite a lot of it on gear. There's quite a lot of it just like base in Raider. You can actually get very high armor builds, which also have very high... Sorry, that's the wrong screen. Also have very high chance to evade. So that's something worth considering for some very niche builds. If you're just stacking Chaos Res, maybe for Divine Flesh, the Chaos Res one is worth noting. Again, you'll see lots of these nodes we've seen earlier. Exposure Therapy, if you want the DoT multi, more Chaos Res against so much of the time. Born of Chaos is the main obvious one. Getting +3 maximum Chaos Res on a Divine Flesh build is very, very big. A lot of people do like Dark Scorn Scourge Arrow Pathfinder. This would be the obvious small jewel of choice for that build. You can get this from better sources. You can get this from better sources. Decent, but better sources. Like, Born of Chaos is really the reason why you would take a Chaos Space Jewel, in my opinion. 1% chance to dodge hits ones have some very interesting ones. So, ignore that. You're not going to be dual wielding. Again, if you were just trying to stack dodge and spell dodge, you would use this space jewel over the evasion based jewel, because the small nodes would still give you some chance to dodge. Aerialist also gives you some increased dexterity if you're doing any dexterity stacking memes, but not generally for chaos dot based builds. Elegant Form gives you 3% chance to dodge attacks and spells, and 3% chance to avoid elemental ailments. If you get 100% chance to avoid elemental ailments, you become immune to all elemental ailments. The block counterpart has the same node, although that one only gives 25% chance to avoid it for some reason, but if you were going for a Kevlava block-based build, you could also go for that on a block base. Darting Movements gives you 5% chance to attack, to dodge attacks and spells while moving, and 5% movement speed. Decent. but not as unique as some of the other options. No Witnesses is incredibly powerful. So if your build doesn't currently get elusive in any real way, this gives you 10% chance of getting elusive on kill, not on crit. So it's just every build kills, and 25% increased elusive effect. Elusive gives movement speed, spell dodge, and normal dodge. Super strong even after the nerfs. Would highly recommend, but yes. That was my very exhaustive video going over all the different options. If you want to look over these yourself, just go on PWDB, and you go PWDB, Dual, and then pick on which one you'd like to go, large, medium, cluster. Yeah, anyway. I'm Tarke. Have a good day. Cluster Dual video, by the way. Bye-bye.